Hello everybody, this is Casey with SimplePotential.com, and today we're going to be taking a look at my Ludum Dare 36 entry. This time the competition's theme was Ancient Technology, and I was really had a game in mind for the other theme that was in the lead, which was Inconvenient Superpower. I wanted to do a kind of a side-scrolling game with a stick man who had an inconvenient superpower of teleporting it randomly. Since that theme didn't get chosen, I chose to try to adapt that same theme to the Ancient Technology theme to the same side-scrolling action game, and that didn't really work out. So in the end, I only had about 10 hours to put a game together because the side-scrolling action was just way too much effort for the amount of time I had to work on this weekend. So I ended up with this. It's a single-player card game, and it's kind of based on the idea that you've stumbled upon an ancient artifact that has sockets in it, and your goal is to play glyphs, or cards in our case, into those sockets, which will activate the main center of the device. And then in the end there would have been something a little more to that, but that's about as far as I got. The end goal is to get 100 energy. It says 1,000 here, but it's actually 100. When you start playing the game, you'll see that, and we'll go ahead and do that. So you get 51 cards. Your goal is to get 100 energy. You start with 5 player points, or PP, which is the cost of the card here. You start with 0 points per turn and 0 energy per turn. However, if you look at these cards, so like in this case, this one gives plus 12 energy. So if I was to play this card, which I can't because I don't have enough PP to play it, this number right here, but if I played this card, I'd get plus 12 per turn energy. So we'd be winning the game almost immediately with this kind of card. It would go very quickly, assuming you could keep your player points up, which at this moment we can't. In fact, the only card we could play right now is this one, which will give us a flat 5 power points. So we won't get it every turn, but we'll go ahead and add 5 to it. This card has this tilde and the number beside it. What that is a turn limit for this card. So if I played this card, after 5 turns, it would disable and you'd no longer be able to obtain the plus 2 PP that's coming from it. And now I will go ahead and say that this game is highly incomplete. It's functional. You have a win condition, you have a lose condition, so from a technical standpoint, it's a game. But it's very much a prototype. The cards are totally not balanced, and I just kind of randomly threw together cards into a deck of 51 cards, which you can see the cards are in this array right here. So they're just a bunch of prefabs, and I just kind of randomly started dragging and dropping things in. I need a 1-cost card in the game. There is not one at the moment, so that pretty much is game breaking at certain times if you get a really bad deal. If you do get a deal where you can't play anything, you can skip, but it costs 2 player points, which is a great feature. That's a great way to get around it. The problem is you only have 5 to start with, so if you don't get a 3-cost card on the next turn, you're screwed. There's no other way to put that. So you just have to restart and go again. The deck is shuffled totally randomly. It's just like shuffling a deck of cards. And you should have a lot more cards, and there should be a lot more variety of cards, which there just aren't. If I was to play this card, I just click on it and it turns green, and you heard a little sound there. The sound in this game is extremely terrible, but I just threw some stuff together really quickly. Like I said, I had about 10 hours to work on this. I did not make the Compo guideline for the time limit, so I entered this as a jam, and even that was probably still kind of a hit or miss thing there. I kind of uploaded it without actually having it totally completed, and I'll go over some of that here in a minute. But your goal would be is to place this in a socket. Now once you place it in a socket, you'll immediately get whatever the power of that card was. So in this case, plus 5 or a flat 5 player points will get added. In this case, 2 player points would get added every turn, but we're going to lose 2 energy every turn. You can go negative on your energy. That doesn't affect the game, but if you run out of player points, your game ends. And this one would give you plus 12 energy every turn. Now the yellow sockets that you might notice, these are randomly placed, 2 yellow and 2 blue. Blue are energy, the yellow are player points. There's no restriction on what you can play in there right now. The actual goal would have been that only player point cards could be played on yellow and only energy could be played on blue. I didn't get around to actually doing that. And the idea would also be is that there'd be a lot different bonuses actually on there. So like maybe right now one of them is going to give you +2 player points per turn, I think it is, or maybe just +1, I don't recall. And the other one will give you a flat number of player points, and then same deal for energy, plus per turn and a flat amount immediately. But ideally, you would have only played point ones on point sockets from the bonus perspective, and then all the gray ones you could just place wherever you wanted. So I'm going to go ahead and place this one here. And you can see I'm getting +1 per turn, so this one had a +1 bonus on it. And I've got 9 player points now, so we're pretty much home free, you would think. The problem is if I was to play this 9-cost card right now, that would be great. We'd get lots of energy, but we'd only get 1 point on the next turn, and I have no 1-point cards in the deck. So I know for a fact I would lose. That's not something a player just coming into this would know. Ideally, we'd have enough cards that you'd never actually see these 2 cards at the same time in your hand. I mean, it'd be very statistically unlikely, but as it is right now, there's 51 cards, so there's not much we can do about that. I'm going to play the +5 energy. Now, I'm going to go ahead and play it on a point one, because we need the points. We need to be able to play stuff. And on this one, I can play for 3 +1 PP. And I'm going to play it on an energy one. As you'll see, we'll either get some flat energy, which will just apply up here, or we'll get some energy per turn. And we got energy per turn. So we're going to start gaining 5 energy per turn now. Now, we got all the same things. Doesn't really matter which one I pick. I'm going to pick one, place it in over here, and we got a flat amount of energy that time. But we also got +5. You can see the glyph here. It will tell you it was a +5. It was a flat 5. +2 energy. Place it. And then in this case, I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier or not, but this is a turn limit. So if I was to play this card right here, I'd be able to play it 5 times, and then after the 5th time, it would disable, and that card would no longer be valid. So you wouldn't get anything from it, and the socket would be used up. There would be ideally some cards in here that would allow you to destroy glyphs, probably at random. So like maybe I'd play a card here, and like this one, play it here, and it would maybe give you a really good like flat 10 player points or something like that, but it would destroy another glyph on the board at random, which means you could lose out on one that's been socketed and the turns are up and it was a dud anyways, which would be great, or it would be one that you played and it would maybe kill off one that's giving you +2 player points or +12 energy, something like that, and that would be really bad. I didn't get around to inputting in any of those kinds of cards. They'd be really easy to put in. For the most part, this is all set up that I can just kind of throw stuff together without too much of a problem. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes maybe to build a card, and that's mostly just because of balancing it out, and like I said, at the moment stuff's not really balanced, so probably even less time, but that's how the game works. So if I play this one here, see, we're losing some energy, but we're also gaining some energy, or gaining some player points for that one. One thing I didn't get around to doing was, instead of click and click, it was going to be drag. So when you'd click here, it'd pick up the blue circle, not the whole card, just the blue circle, and it would drag to a socket. And I think that would have worked out really well, but I didn't get around to doing that. And another thing would have been is when you hovered over one of these, right now nothing happens, but you should have been able to hover or click on them and actually see the card that was in there, and the bonus that was applied if there was any. Again, something I didn't get around to. I'm going to go ahead and play this one. And I'm going to play this one. And I'm going to play this one, and we're going to win. So, that's how you play the game. There's a skip button, so if you get a whole bunch of cards that are just things you can't play or don't want to play, you can skip, but it costs you 2 player points. So use it kind of cautiously. And you can see our alien artifact in the middle became green, so it's active. Again, you would have eventually went on to another level. Now, the main idea here was, so this level here has been totally generated using just manually placing out sockets on the screen. The idea was that this would actually be read from an image or a text file, and like a tile reader. I was having too many problems with that. and it's something I'm actually working on, and as soon as I can get it working correctly, I'm going to post code up for that and probably a video on that as well. And I think that'll work out really good. It's technically it's working just fine if I use all black, all blue, all red, all green, or all white, or totally transparent. The pixels are being read out correctly, so on an image, but they're and everything will line up just fine. But if I do a slightly off shade of color, so like 255, 25, 25, they're not being read correctly. They're being off by a few points either direction. So I suspect that it's something to do with Unity compressing the image, even though I'm streaming it in from a file. And so that shouldn't be the case. And I've also tried just importing it in and giving it no compression, and it still causes a problem. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but that's a story for another video. But had I gotten that to work, you'd have seen a lot more levels in here, and I just didn't get it to actually function. Tried to go with the text version of it, but placement kind of became an issue, and it was a little tedious to try to set up the levels in the amount of time I had to work with it. So I nixed that idea, and I just decided one level, and I'll just put some sockets out there because I think it gets the idea across anyways. If I click restart, you're going to see the instructions here, which we've kind of already covered. But click through, and so far I'm okay. But if I skipped, I can skip, I'm going to lose. And if you got these 3 cards the first 2 turns, you'd be up a creek. Because there'd be nothing you can do about it. So like I said, there's definitely some balancing issues. Another feature that I really wanted to implement and just was really outside of the scope of what I could do and the amount of time I had was these connecting lines would have actually done something, some sort of adjacency bonus or something. So maybe if it's an energy connected to a point one or something, maybe it'd give you an extra energy or something of that nature. Like I said, didn't get around to actually doing that, something I would have really liked to have done. There is actually a bug on the uploaded versions of this on Ludum Dare, which I will be correcting, was being offset, so it was like over here, so you couldn't really read it, and that was really bad. So I did eventually fix that, and the way that was fixed, for anybody who's curious, is down here on the canvas, there is a script I added, which you just come into add component and type it in, aspect ratio filter, and set it to height controls width in my case because I'm using a non-widescreen. I think if you was using a 16.9 as your default, you'd probably want to do width controls height, which I think is what it defaulted to. Oops. And the ratio automatically set to the ratio I had it set to when I imported it in. I imagine if you had it in 16.9 when you inserted this component, it would probably change. But basically that number is just, so look at my standard resolution here, it is 1024 by 760, or divided by 768. Gives you 1.333 repeating. And that totally took care of the issue. It's an issue that's actually bugged me in a lot of the projects I've done. And I've done other things to try to make things work right. And for instance, I've actually done a project where I put the entire game inside of the canvas. It functions. I don't know if there's a downside to doing that. I've never found one, other than it's really tedious to work with. So I don't recommend doing that. I think if you're using a lot of physics in your game, it would probably become a really bad idea. But in a game like this, where there's no physics really involved, it shouldn't be an issue at all if you want to do it that way. Play it here on itch.io, and it will actually load up inside of the screen here. And it's embedded, and I did embed it on the Ludum Dare site as well, so it does work. I haven't tested this on my phone, but in all honesty, it ought to work just fine. And I'm not sure if you can hear that in the background. There's a little click. So there's a kind of just a little drum beat that plays in the background. Like I said, sound sucks, but all games should have sound in my opinion. You don't have sound in your game, you're automatically getting points deducted. Slither.io is a great example. The game is great. It's a great little time waster, but it has absolutely no sound, so I can't hardly play it. It may just be me, but that's the way it is. But the sound on the web version here, you can kind of hear it. It's got a little click at the end. I don't know what's causing that. I'm sure it's some sort of compression issue or something with the player itself on the web in HTML5. I'm not sure, but something is adding a click to that. You don't hear it in the main game, but you do hear it on the web version. Not sure why. But it does totally function out here. I'm going to lose because of the deal that I got. But see, that's how ideally you would do it. You'd get some that will actually allow you to play on the bonus tiles immediately. And then once you've done that, as long as you don't get a bad deal on the first 2 turns, you can pretty much win without any issues. So obviously some balance issues that need to be taken into consideration, but otherwise it's totally functional. It works. Give it a try. Let me know if you like it or dislike it. Let me know if you think it's something you'd like to see taken further. Is this a game you would like to play, with better graphics and design applied to it maybe, but let me know. And I'm not really planning on going over any of the code here. It's all going to be available for download. If you want to use it, you can. The only thing you might see that I'm doing differently than maybe in some of my other projects is I'm using on enable for the events instead of on start. And that's because when you destroy the scene, I don't know if this is an update to Unity that was causing it or what, but when you actually destroy the scene, unload it, and then reload it, for some reason it wasn't killing off some of the objects like it should, and it was getting all kinds of errors. So it switched over to on enable, and the problem went away. So that's why I'm using on enable if you look at the code and wonder why. Beyond that, I think everything's pretty standard. Sound controller, there's a game controller, a class for the cards, class for the sockets. Scalable camera is actually turned on, but it's not actually necessary at the moment. But you might take a look at that code. You could actually use this in your own project without any issues, and it'll basically scale your camera to the width and height and the pixels that you're using. I don't think there's anything else in here. Everything else is just a little bitty scripts for the individual objects to make them work. Aside from sound controller, which is pretty much my standard sound controller for all of my projects. It's just takes in sound clips and plays them, and then on the actual game itself, it'll say game sound.play a sound, but it'll play a sound, and there's a Boolean variable to play if only sound playing, and what that'll do is if there's no sound playing, it'll play it, and if there's another sound effect playing, it won't. Doesn't include the theme music. There's 2 separate sound controllers on the system, or sound audio sources. One's for playing the theme music, and the other one is for playing all other sound. So if the sound effects controller basically is playing something else, then that variable will tell it whether or not it should play this sound over the top of it, which it can do perfectly fine, but that's not always desirable. And then there's a volume control, which is a float. Just put pretty much whatever number you want in there. Just be careful of your eardrums. I'm sure there's a maximum limit to it. I'm just not sure what that is offhand. And then the first variable there is the clip that you actually want to play, which I'm storing on the game controller. And that is pretty much it. There's not a whole lot to this. It's not a very complicated set of code or anything like that. Like I said, this was designed about 5 hours, or 10 hours roughly. Sorry. And the rest of the time, or a lot of that time rather, was spent probably on the graphics work, which is really quite sad considering what it looks like. But that's where I ended up. This was my entry. Give it a play. Let me know your thoughts. If you've got any questions about the code or anything like that, just shoot me an email, casey@simplepotential.com, or you could also email admin@simplepotential.com. I watch them both. And I think that is all I wanted to show on this video. There will be a written piece up on my website, which is simplepotential.com. And email me, comment if you have any questions about that. All that information, I've said my email address already, I believe, but the description of the video will have contact info in it as well. And I think that's going to be it, and we'll be back again for Ludum Dare number 37, whenever that is. I'll update the site and let you know when that's going to be, and I'll see you then. Thanks.